Let's pray, y'all. Blessed God, we are so grateful to know you. What just what that amazes me that we can know you. And God, that we are so grateful that you never tire of us. You never get tired of listening to us. You listen to us when we are happy. You listen to us when we're not so happy. You listen to us whenever we are full of praise for the blessings that have been poured into our lives. And you especially lean in whenever we tell you we're in need. And tonight, God, we come before you always with needs. Mm. But we're glad that you're there, that we know that you love us, that you care for us. And when we open ourselves up and say, God, we need these things, that we are just entrusting them to your love and to your care. And so, God, tonight, I just pray, first of all, for Kevin as he's getting on this train. Be with him, God. Protect him, keep him safe. God, surround him with protection as he rides the train. Keep him, just his spirits good, keep his body strong. God, be with him as he travels. Be with him the whole time that he's gone, and bring him home safely to his mother, because you know that's what mothers are concerned about. So I'll be with Marcella too. Just give her some rest while he's gone on this trip. God, we lift up Janice's cousin John, who with this diagnosis, we're going to hear you actually say this tonight in the text. I am the Lord who heals. And so, God, however you choose to work in his body, we give you just the full control to do what needs to be done, God. Be with him, be with the doctors who treat him, be with all of those that are looking in on his health, be with the family that surrounds him. Give everyone the understanding they need as they go through this ordeal together, God. And I pray that your will be done in this. I also pray the same for Britt, God. God, I pray that you will bolster her spirit. God, give her strength, just fortitude, emotional fortitude, as well as strength in her body. Mm. Lord, we lift up Linda's daughter who is dealing with this death in her family in a time of tremendous duress in that region of the country. God, we lift up all of those who are suffering loss in the Pacific Northwest, all of the damage that is done in the infrastructure because of this remarkable heat. God, I pray that you will be with all of those. Keep this region as safe as they can possibly be in these circumstances. God, we are going to trust you to do that. Be with the daughter, comfort them in this time of loss, in this time of tremendous anxiety. We pray for her son-in-law as he goes in to defend his studies. God, give him good reward for his labor. Be with him, fill his mouth with the right words, so that he defends, and that all of the knowledge that has been poured into him comes up again. God, finally, we pray for our brother Chris. Lord, I pray that you will just continue to strengthen him. Continue, Lord, to give him good optimism as he goes forward. Give him the space he needs to feel every which kind of way he needs to feel as he's going through this. But through it all, God, please let your assurance be prevalent in his heart and his mind that you're with him during this journey. We love you, Lord. We're so grateful that we can call you when we need you and that you're with us. And so now I pray that you will be with us in this time of study together. God, I just thank you for this family. I thank you for everyone that's here, for those that are looking this way. What a blessing it is to be in this community. What a blessing. We're so grateful. Now be with us, and we'll give your name the praise for all that's accomplished. In the lovely name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Now let's go into some slides. Lots of fun stuff tonight. If you are not muted until you talk, if you can mute, because we're getting some feedback, and then we always hate that kind of stuff, you know. Where are we at? We all muted? There we go. Good. Thank you all. I want to thank you all for this beautiful Pride service. And right about now, I'm going to ask you if you got anything you want to tell our preacher, Janice Beard. You can open up your line and tell her, because I think she just did a beautiful job and just set our service in a beautiful place. So either in the chat, or if you have any kind of things, I just want us to congratulate her for bringing a powerful and beautiful and deeply touching message to the church on pride. So I'm going to be quiet real quick. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I know some of you probably want to say something because, yes.
I do, Janice. That was just so moving. You have such a gift. I loved your story, your stories, and I thank you. And yes, you are on your path.
Amen.
Thank
Anybody
you,
else?
Janice. It was awesome. Love your singing as well.
There you go. I just want to thank Janice because she has been with us from the, Janice was the one that came to me when I was working at Pillar of Love and just said, where are you going next? Are you going to start a church? And I said, yeah, I think so. She goes, okay, I'm with you. And she was there from I said to Shay, I said, oh yeah, we already got our first member. So it's just a wonderful thing. And she's been with us from the start. Let's all keep Janice in prayer. She's now a seminarian, and I try to check in on her every now and then and see how she's doing, because that's a lot of hard work. But I'm just so grateful for her and her willingness to get in this and do the study and do the work. And it is so important, particularly for those of us that are moving into ministry, that have been around ministry our whole lives, that we get all of our training and all of our ducks in a row so that we're solid. Because a lot of times there are a lot of folks that know a little bit and preach a lot. We want to know a whole lot and preach a little. And so that's sort of the way that works. So I want to thank you all for a wonderful service. I want to talk about what's coming next, though, which is on the 18th. We're going live, y'all. And I was just out at the place today to look at this gorgeous sort of backyard space in West Logan on Fullerton and Central Park. It's a lovely space. We will be live streaming on YouTube. For those of you that can't be here, you can certainly tune in, but we will do a very short service. This is the service, and this is the mantra for our live services. Come for the worship, stay for the dance. And that's kind of the idea. We will do a brief worship service, and then we will go into spinning music, and we'll turn Russell and Angela loose and let them do what they do when they are playing professionally all over the city. There will be a lot, folks can dance. We will have refreshments, including some a little wine and a little beer for those that would like a little bit of that kind of stuff. That's going to be available for folks. So it's going to be a different kind of, I keep saying to myself, if you look at the Gospels, Jesus went to more parties than he went to synagogues. And so we're going to kind of hang into that little bit of that space. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And so plan for the 18th, invite all the friends that are like, that don't like this is church for those that aren't so crazy about church. So get them here and invite everybody. It's going to be a wonderful time. And now let's go into, then the following week we will be live. I will be back on YouTube for all of us with everybody's video pieces, just like as always in the service. And the theme all of July is flow. Rivers of living water will flow out from within them. This idea of what is inside us, what is the goodness that's inside of us that we need to just release. Even as we're coming back into the world and everything is opening up, we want to make sure that we are just, all of this goodness just begins to flow out of us. And that will be the sort of the theme in the way that the worship service is constructed, is to think about all the goodness that's in us, because a lot of us have been told there's not much goodness in us. And I want y'all to know, I know every last one of you like the back of my hand, and there's more goodness there's enough goodness here to just fix the whole world. So we just get in the flow, we can see what happens here. So I want to make sure that we are still, know that we're still on board with our monthly. I couldn't live without those monthly virtual services. I just could not. I need that myself. So that's there. And now let's look into where we are tonight. We are going into the wilderness, y'all. And we're getting out of last week, last week was heavy because we were crossing the Red Sea. And, when this Bible study was over, Shay and I talked very briefly, and I said, I'm exhausted getting these kids across the Red Sea. That was just a lot of work. And so this week we've got some really cool and interesting things to do. And one of the things that's been interesting me, and this is I haven't done a real slide about this at all, I just want to kind of put it in the back of your mind while we're talking, is that over and over and over in scripture, we keep having these episodes where people that God has sort of called get pulled out into the wilderness. Abraham gets called out of Ur and into the wilderness. and the children of Israel get called out of Exodus and into the wilderness. The prophet Elijah, after he has all of this, all of these big miracles and everything, he gets pulled out into the wilderness. Plenty of the prophets go into the wilderness. Jesus and John the Baptist go into the wilderness. After Paul's conversion, he sort of disappears for a long time, goes down into Syria. Nobody hears from him for a while. There is this interesting notion that the wilderness experience is a formative time, that what happens in the wilderness, and that's what we do when we do Lent, right? It is this idea of what are we taking into the wilderness? What are we leaving in the wilderness? What are we bringing out of the wilderness? And so I think it's kind of an interesting way to, in tonight's lesson, to kind of keep it in the back of our minds as sort of this is sort of the wilderness a little bit, and what does this wilderness mean? And how is this going to sort of transform these people? Because they're about to go a shocking transformation. And so let's kind of start with that and kind of see what happens and how this works. This is the story of a people, remember, not the history of a nation. We talked about how Martin Buber says there's a kernel of history, but there's a pearl that gets built around that. A beautiful story grows up around perhaps a kernel there's a kernel of truth, but there's a beautiful story that gets wound up and built up around it, right? And one of the things that he talks about when he's talking about going into the wilderness and what happens in the wilderness, he keeps going back to how it's very likely that a lot of the stuff that we assume is like sort of novel that happens in the wilderness probably has been happening to these people for a long, long time. But the founders, he calls them, the people who are writing and compiling the Torah, are looking at old traditions and trying to place them in a time and in a tradition, right? Their desire is not for something new necessarily, but for time old and eternal, Buber writes, that which has always and everlastingly been there, part and parcel of the inner essence of the world. Now, what does that mean? That's Buber being very Buberesque, by the way. He talks this way all the time. But what this really, really means is he's saying that when they were going back to tell the story of their story, they were not reaching for, we discovered everything. This is not a Columbus tale. We discovered the law in the wilderness. We discovered God. We discovered Yahweh. It is that Yahweh has always been here. These ideas have always been here. And this story is a way of us placing them so that we understand them, that they are always sort of around. And so there's something really wonderful about that, and I find very, very reassuring. So this is not about, while it's the birth of a movement, this is not necessarily meant to be the birth of a religion, right? A lot of these ideas and practices have been around for a long time, and we're going to see some of that. Some of them actually have been drawn from other cultures, and we'll catch some of that tonight too. But it is this idea that when they were compiling these stories, because remember, the Torah is written about the time, right around the time of the Babylonian conquest, right? And so they're looking into the past and saying, this is the stuff that we cherish that's always been part of us. And they're saying, how did this come to be? Well, we don't know, but we're going to assign it to this time and to this story, and let this story become the structure in which all of this sort of emerges. And so that's kind of part of the theme for tonight. But there's some other things as we look into this story that's kind of interesting. If we move on, we look into the story, we have to realize that this crossing, that we all saw Charlton Heston take everybody across the Red Sea in the movie. I'm going to stop referring to that movie here in a couple of weeks, because the movie kind of loses its way. It forgets Exodus after a while. But that whole big dramatic scene, I remember when I first saw this movie as a kid, I saw it at the Roosevelt Theater. Some of you may remember the Roosevelt Theater down on State Street. It was one of these big, I think now it's the Channel 7 studios, but it used to be the Roosevelt Theater. This big mass across from the Chicago Theater, and it was packed. And it was all these church buses that had come up on a Saturday morning to go see the 10 Commandments. And everybody packed into the theater. This was got to be like in the early 70s. It was the revival of the movie. And everybody packed in. And boy, when those waters parted and all of those extras went crossing and all the water walls were going on every side, people just started rejoicing in the theater. They just, oh, hallelujah. Everybody just started waving their hands and stuff. It was the big moment. And then they come out and there's the big party. They dance and they do this big praise like we talked about last week. Here's the reality of it though. Once the dance is over, they've got to figure out where they are, who they are, and what they're going to do. And this is a traumatic shift. In Exodus 12, we read that the length of that the Israelites lived in Egypt was 430 years. Before that, they were a pastoral people living in Canaan. Remember that Joseph is out tending flock. Jacob is a shepherd. They are living their country folk. And through Joseph's kidnapping and all that stuff, they wind up in Egypt, where now they are living in an urban environment, right? They're living in a city, in a very different kind of place, but they do it, according to the story, they do it for 430 years. That's 15 generations. I don't know if somebody on this phone, can anybody trace their family back 15 generations? I think the best most of us can do, some of us might get to 4 or 5. That might be impressive if we could get back, right? To a great grandfather, right? 15 generations in Egypt. Their living memory, everybody's living memory, is life in Egypt. Life enslaved, life in an urban kind of dwelling, life with all, they have no connection to any land. And now here they are, and they've crossed through the Red Sea, and they are now going to be a nomadic people. I wrote this in the, I think in the email. I believe I wrote it in the email. I may have taken it out. Think about how traumatized we get when we go on a weekend camping trip. All right, just think about that. How, oh my God, did we remember this? Did we remember that? We got to get the groceries, remember the sleep. Or if we have to go on vacation. These people picked up, took everything they had, and now they're in the desert as a roaming people. So this is a traumatic shift. And if we move on, Shay, what happens, of course, is that when that happens and you get out there and things are not what they used to be, all of a sudden anxiety rears its head up. So starting in chapter 15 all the way through 17, we keep getting these snapshots of nomadic anxiety. And the first one happens right after they get across. They wind up to a place called Mara, which, oh, by the way, means bitter. And so they get there and they're thirsty because where are they? They're in the desert. And they go to drink the water, but the water is bitter. And so what do? The first thing, it's like, what will we drink? You've got us out here, Moses. What will we drink? How are we supposed to do this? How are we supposed to make this work? And then and we're going to get to what happens here in a minute. But then they keep going, and all of a sudden they look up and like there's no food, allegedly. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. And the whole scriptures in 16 says the whole Israelite community complained against Moses and Aaron in the desert. We're anxious. You got us out here. You know, we're used to, even in Egypt, they had to feed us. You know, where's our dinner? What's going on there? And then we go to chapter 17 and there's another problem with water. Where's the water? And the people argued with Moses, it says, and said, give us water to drink. So their basic needs they're struggling with. But these stories are sort of told to get us a sense of how anxious they are. Now watch what happens, of course. Every time that they get anxious, look what happens. So what happens in Mara? The Lord speaks to Moses and says, all right, go get a branch of a tree and put it in the water, and that'll fix the water. And sure enough, the water gets sweetened. And now they all have all the water they can drink. And I love this. All of a sudden they go and they camp at Elim, which has 12 springs, and I love this, 70 palm trees. They go to Palm Springs. That's where they go, you know, and they're camped out there. Now, of course, the problem with an oasis when you're a nomadic people is you're not the only people looking for the oasis, right? So it's not like you can make this your home. You'd have to fight for that. So they know they've got to move on. And so they move on. And then they start complaining that there's no food, no ready-made food. And what happens? Here's the famous chapter 16. Quail comes at sundown, get all the quail you can eat. And I would love to see that cookbook, because they've got to learn how many different ways can you make quail, right? But they're going to make quail and eat quail in the evening. And then in the morning, bread's going to fall out of the sky, manna. And we're going to talk about that as well. But there's manna in the morning and quail at sundown. There is this sort of miraculous thing. And remember what we said last week, a miracle is a miracle because people believe it's a miracle. That's what makes it miraculous. And so you can look all day for logical explanations of this, but for them, it was miraculous. And so they looked and they saw this food is provided for them miraculously. Then they get back to the water shortage and they're saying, where's this water? And God says to Moses, go get that rod that you've been using, that shepherd's rod you were carrying from the burning bush all the way through the plagues. Go get that. Take it over to the rock, hit the rock. And Moses hits the rock and sweet water just flows out of the rock. These wonderful kind of stories. Now, here's the thing about these stories is they're not there to talk about, because we've said, remember that God is elemental. God is always working in nature, and that's always the assumption. But they're not doing that just to show God. This is not like, Disney special effects, right? This is not that. This is to show that the people are highly anxious. They are extraordinarily ill-suited for this trip. They are not ready in any way, shape, or form. And the minute it starts to look bad, all right, it's all over for them. They start grumbling and complaining, and murmuring is the word. I love the King James. They're murmuring. I don't like this. What's up with why we got you got us out here, got us all the way out here. Yeah, it sucked to live in Egypt, but at least we knew where our water came from. At least, come on, there's all of this kind of murmuring. And so really what the writers are trying to get us to understand is that there's anxiety. They have become a deeply anxious people. Any thoughts or comments or questions up till now?
I'll just say, listening to you, Tim, this is a great way to start. In the same way that the people are nomadic in terms of seeking the basic needs of their daily lives in food and water, they're also nomadic or in their spirituality as well.
Mm-hmm.
That they're trying to fill this out, and they're often asking Moses questions when and complaining to Moses. And I think that brings a really interesting point about the wilderness, and that all of our theology, even after coming out of Egypt and all of this, is still a work in progress. It's still provisional. Our language, our understanding of God, our covenants. And so it's the second that we don't have water, we kind of look up and, to whom can we complain? And, can I talk to the manager? Can I talk to God? And it's crazy how quickly we forget those moments of coming out. And it's like the second that we have need, we are so prone to go back to a nomadic sort of scarcity mentality.
Yes, a scarcity mentality as opposed to a God of abundance. But I think it's also important to say your point is really important, is to understand that this theology is always evolving, right? I think that so much of us, and a lot of us come from traditions where somebody says we figured it all out, and this is how it was, and don't ask any more questions. Don't you dare ask any questions. But what's really wild is that and we're going to see this in a minute, people are always asking questions. And you're going to see that their beef is with Moses. Yeah, I want to talk to, but their big beef is with God. And I love that. And the Psalms are full of people having the same kind of beef. And there are stories all through the Bible. People are like, I don't get this. I don't like it. I don't understand it. I don't know what's happening here. That's really important. Tony, did I see your hand go up for a sec?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because, in this context, it's reversed from like the Mexica, where they were once nomads, but then they sort of went down to Mexico and built their own city. But we also, in terms of the empire, we also think about how sort of a big shift was for the Mongols, because you have to remember that the Mongols were, and many of them, there's a still population who are nomadic, but in the old days, they were a heavily nomadic people, a purely nomadic people before they went into their sort of khanates and empire, where they sort of ruled over the four different kingdoms: the Yuan dynasty in China, the El Khanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde Khanate in Russia and Eastern Europe. So you have to really think about how sort of a big shift it was for them.
Yeah. And that's the wild thing. And of course, these folks right away are because there is this Abrahamic covenant in play, right? There is this promise that I'm going to bring you into your own land. We keep talking about how the land is filled with milk and honey, right? And this idea that there you're going to have pasture for your cattle. There's going to be plenty of fruit on the trees for you. You're going to be able to eat and live this sort of wonderful, fully equipped life. They are pushing in that direction, right? But the question becomes, how do I get there? And that goes back to both Tony's comment and Shay's comment, that a nomadic existence is not just wandering around. You know, it is, there's somewhere we got to go. And some nomad, even to this day, some nomad hunter-gatherer cultures, they are very intentional on where they're going. They're not just wandering around loosey-goosey. They're en route to somewhere. And so there is this need, but it's just, they're very anxious about this. They've never lived like this for 430 years, according to the Exodus. Tone, one more, yeah? Is that something else for you? There?
Well,
Yeah.
just my hands are also the Lakota.
Yeah.
And the Plains peoples with the white buffalo cavalrymen, they were like starving for like all those 19 generations ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, when the American bison died, we have to understand it had a heavy loss of life for the Plains Nation because they depended on the bison for centuries.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Which one of the reasons why the American bison was wiped out originally was to get rid of the Plains Nation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So there is this idea of nomad life. And what's really funny is when you're in a nomadic existence, of course, it puts everything in sharp relief, doesn't it? Your basic needs become your primary concerns. There's no going to Jewel, right? You just can't pop into the grocery store. No heading off to Kroger, right? Was that somebody else with a comment? Are we going to?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Chris.
Tim, I just want to go back to that concept of 15 generations. So I can actually trace my family back 12 generations, I think.
Wow.
And actually, that spans quite a long time. So that goes back to the kind of mid early 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
And within that time, particularly kind of a family that started off as on the poor side of a rural economy.
Mm-hmm.
Within that time, you can kind of trace moving along with the kind of agricultural revolution, moving along with the industrial revolution, kind of moving to where jobs were created, where industry was created. At times, people being, I have family members who were in prison, who were in workhouses, and who moved to other parts of the world. And I think that's really important in this kind of context of this Exodus story, that, it talks about 15 generations. 15 generations spans a huge point. And actually, if you look at all of your own histories, within 15 generations, none of you were in the US.
Right.
We are all nomadic people by this definition.
You're exactly right. Exactly right. Because we're all moving into, and we're also, and much like they were, and Chris, I love the returning our thoughts to the time, because we know even, not only historically, but even according to the Exodus, that the culture of Egypt changed over that time. The way that Egypt worked, right? Different pharaohs had different policies. And we saw this because originally, remember, according to the Exodus, they come in as sort of an immigrant working class, but it's over time that they're enslaved. Things keep changing over time. Think about in the history of Egypt itself, we know there were great developments and great things that were developed over 400 years. 400 years is a very long time, y'all.
And if you think about the US, why are most of you in the US? Now, for some people, that's because of slavery. For some people, that's because of economic poverty. For some people, that's because you were forced off lands in Europe.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's because of religious persecution.
Right.
And
Right.
all of that appears in this Exodus story.
All of it, exactly. And what's really interesting is because the only people in America that can trace their generations back in America are the Native Americans. They're the only ones. And, you know, so it's really a powerful idea. And I think that also gives us a good tap into how anxious these folks are and how concerned they are. We all love in America, you know, Chris, as you know, like everybody else, to tell the story of coming over on the boat. And, you know, I mean, I'm not talking about the slave boats, because that's a different sort of story. That's a different saga, which we don't like to tell that story at all. But there is this mythology. There was a movie in the 70s, a 2-part movie, a Swedish film actually, called The Immigrants and the New Land, that some of you may have seen, with Lee Bowman and Max von Sydow. That was about the ordeal of coming across the sea and people being sick and dying on the ship, and then taking the family all the way to Minnesota to farm and all of that. It's very similar. It's got all the dynamics of the Exodus. It's a very human story. Yeah. Shay, let's move on and look at what happens next. So we get to Shay's point. We get to the fact where the people get real testy and God gets real testy. Everybody gets testy right about here. Moses gets testy. Everybody's a little uptight, you know. The Lord made a regulation and a ruling there, meaning at Marah, at the bitter water, and there he tested them, it says. The Lord said, if you're careful to obey the Lord your God and do what God thinks is right, pay attention to God's commandments and keep all of God's regulations, then I won't bring on you any of the diseases that I brought on the Egyptians. Well, that's got to be kind of comforting if you're out in the desert and God's saying, you know, I'm thinking about whether or not, you know, I need to let you get sick. That's can't be a whole lot of comfort for an anxious people, right? And God says that he's going to test you. But then there is this assurance, I am the Lord who heals you. Now, what's very interesting is he says this after he turns the bitter water sweet. I have healed the water. I've healed the water. I can heal you as well. You're just going to have to trust me. You're going to have to roll with this as we go forward. But by 17, the people have had it again. They've had it before the manna shows up. Now they're upset again because of the water. And Moses says to them, why are you arguing with me? Why are you testing the Lord? And what's very interesting is that these words are both the same word. There's no different word. Why are you testing the Lord? The Lord is testing them. Why are you testing the Lord? But the people were very thirsty for water, and they complained to Moses. And here we go. Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us, our children and our livestock, with thirst? So Moses cried out to the Lord and said, what should I do with this people? They're getting ready to stone me. Things are a little rough here, right? And so he calls that place Massa and Meribah. Massa meaning proof, to be proven. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And Meribah being contention, because the Israelites argued with and tested the Lord, asking, is the Lord really with us or not? This goes back to Shay's point of this walk and this journey that we're on. There are plenty of times whenever we know that we're being tested, but there are plenty of other times whenever we want to say, all right, you know, God, you're going to have to prove yourself right about here. We need you to prove yourself. And that's the challenge that we've got. And a lot of us need to just, you know, a lot of us have been taught not to do that. Oh, I wouldn't question God. Feel free. Why are you testing the Lord? Because we're thirsty and we're out here. Have you brought us out here to kill us? There are many times in my own life where I've been in a situation that I know I was supposed to be there, and I got there, and it was like, I don't know why I'm here. I had a terrible job that I hated when I lived in LA. But I found out the reason why I was supposed to be there was to learn how to endure a job that I hated. Because that testing was very important for me. And it taught me how to find grace in those kinds of situations. And so there's this testiness that's going on. The people are anxious and they're argumentative. They're contentious. Some versions have actually said that they are tempting God. is actually the translation that they're using. They're tempting God. You better do something fabulous here because we have been listening to you. We did everything you said. We put the blood on the doors. We walked through the sea. We've done everything. And now look where we are. It's just part of the experience. It's part of the journey, folks. That's no consolation when you're in the middle of it. Anybody before we move on, because we're going to get to manna next. Let's talk about this manna, what happens next. Oh, no, I want to talk about this, excuse me. There is also a problem with Moses that we need to be aware of, because Moses is a desert prophet. He's not a voice that's being raised against injustice the way the prophets like Jeremiah and Isaiah are talking to the governors and saying, you got to get you people need to do better. You've lost your way. He is actually saying this is the way. As the prophet, he is becoming the governing voice. And this is counterintuitive to a Bedouin lifestyle. Bedouins will operate off a kind of a council model. They have for time immemorial. The elders get together. Even this day in Afghanistan, we're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming weeks as we withdraw from Afghanistan. We're going to hear a lot about tribal councils, about what's happening and who's embracing the Taliban, who's not embracing the Taliban, what the chieftains are saying. But it's a council. It's a dialogue kind of government, and it's a government by consent. And so there is always dissent, and that tribalism, this is sort of normative in this kind of government. But what's happening is Moses is like, we don't have time for all that. You just go where I'm telling you, do what I'm telling you to do. And so the problem with Moses from the people's standpoint is, who is Moses serving? Is Moses just out here doing the God thing and just dragging us along? Or is Moses serving us? And what we as the observers, the distant observers, can see that they can't see in the story is that Moses is also aware that God has made this promise. This has been built into their tradition. It's baked into their narrative. A promise was made to Abraham a long time ago that they would live in their own land of milk and honey. And so Moses is serving them, but he is answering to God. And that makes him problematic to follow. Just makes him problematic because we always want, what are our complaints always with our own politicians? You're not serving my needs. You're not doing what I need to do. And that's the challenge that Moses has right now with these folks. So we get to the manna, which literally means, y'all probably know this, manna the translation of the word manna actually means, what is it? What is this stuff? This is this flaky stuff that fell from the sky and they would gather it. There's this whole rule, and we'll talk about that in a minute, the rules of gathering the manna. And I love it. If you want to just spend a good afternoon, just Google what could manna possibly be. And there are millions, there are scientific articles, there are naturalist articles, there are theological articles. Everybody in the world has weighed in on what manna can be. I've just lifted these three out because these are the biggest of the three kind of the theories. There are in this region tamarisk trees that yield a rosin that is sweet to the taste and flakes up. And people thought, well, maybe, and if it blows in the wind and it comes out of the sky, that might be the manna that falls from heaven. There are species of lichen that are digestible, that are sweet to the taste, which are this kind of a fungus that grows and can blow in the breeze. And people did that. Most everybody thinks that this might be actually something. There is a class of insects called scaly insects. They're not pretty and they're not common in the Americas, but they emit something called honeydew, a very sweet kind of thing that flakes up. And what you're looking at back here is actually, they can emit so much of it that it almost looks like it's snow on the ground. And so what happens is Moses says in the morning, the dew's going to fall. And after the dew lifts, there will be all of this stuff all over the ground that you can gather up and eat. That's your bread in the morning. Get yourself enough for each day. And we're going to talk about the rules in a minute, but get you enough of this for each day. And at night, when it's time for dinner, quails are going to come in the sky, and that will be your dinner. And this becomes the 40-year nomadic diet of this group for 40 years. I have trouble if we have chicken 2 nights in a row. But here we go, 40 years of honeydew in the morning, this flaky stuff, and manna at night. Now, there's a really interesting reason why this story is so prominent in the Exodus, and it's really got a lot less to do with what it is and more to do with what it's about. We find out that when they're coming out into the wilderness, they're leaving the oasis with, remember, Palm Springs? They're leaving Palm Springs, and they leave on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had left the land of Egypt. Remember, God told them we're going to do a fresh start and jumpstart the calendar, start fresh, right? And what's interesting is in calendar time, the 15th, the middle of the month, is usually when the moon is full. So why would they do that? Can anybody take a guess on why they would decide to leave during a full moon?
Traveling light.
They got to see where they're going. So a full moon gives them light to travel by. They can cover more ground. And so they leave it with a full moon. And it's, according to the scripture, it's the 2nd month. So this is Iyar. It was formerly known as the month of Ziv on the Hebrew calendar, but it's about April, May, spring, and they're off. Now, here's a question that I love, though. Why are they hungry? What's the problem here? They have all this livestock with them. Why are they hungry? And that's a question that the texts don't ever answer. It's just one of those things that looks like it got past the editor. Why are they hungry? And then we get into these themes of we're hungry. And I think the reason why they're hungry is just so we can begin to see we're thirsty, we're hungry, to see that God is going to provide for them. And it sets up this grumbling drama, this proving. God's testing them, they're testing God. All this drama is evolving. All this stuff is starting to happen. And so there are these rules too. Get all you can for one day. Just get enough for one day. Does everybody remember what happens if you take more than you should have for one day? Does anybody remember what happens to the manna? What happens? Does anybody remember?
It spoils.
Doesn't it rot? Spoil?
It spoils.
It spoils. Yeah, it turns wormy. You can only take what you need. But then Moses says, but get twice as much on the last day of the week, because you're going to have to eat on the Sabbath. Now, think about that for a minute. What's weird about that? What hasn't happened yet? We don't have any commandments. They haven't been to Sinai. They're on their way to Sinai. Why is Moses talking about the Sabbath? There's been no commandment about the Sabbath yet. What's interesting is we'll go back to that Buber observation, right? That Buber observation, which is they're putting a context around where these traditions, these cherished traditions, this is something that's sweet to them and they want to honor it and give the full life of it. So they are already practicing the Sabbath before they're told to practice the Sabbath. Then he says, get a jar of this, and we're going to keep it with us, and we're going to store it in the tabernacle. The same problem. There is no tabernacle. They haven't built any tabernacle yet, but Moses is telling them to take stuff to put in a place that doesn't exist. The story is very interesting, what the writers are doing here. And that's because, we love a good linear. We want to connect all the dots according to time. And there's something I want us to be aware of when we're reading scripture, is that the rabbis used to say this, and I love this. There is no early or late in the Torah. Time is not really that important. What happened first and what happened second, don't try to use a chronological logic for the stuff, because there may be a better reason to put these stories together. There may be a better reason for us to put them together than to say first A, then B, then C, and then D. So the assumption the rabbis have made when they read these texts and look at these anomalies, and it's very weird because the rabbis were always hard pressed. They use a and some of you guys know this, a technique called midrash, this idea of borrowing over here and borrowing over here to explain something that's happening over here. And they did that because they were convinced that the Bible was fully, it was exactly the way that God wanted it told. This is the story according to the way that God inspired the story to be told. There is no real mistakes, no errors in the Torah. And so they say there's no early or late. They've decided, the writers decided to combine all these stories so that we can see and hear this theme of grumbling and proving and need and provision. We can see all of that happening together. So who knows when they got manna? They may have got manna the last 2 weeks. We don't know. It says 40 years, but the idea is just to tell everybody that God provides. You are going to be tested. You're going to test God. There's going to be a lot of grumbling. There's going to be a lot of back and forth in all of this. But in the middle of it, just get through it. You're going to come through. So I want to talk a little bit about the Sabbath because, first of all, I have a special love for the Sabbath. But this is what Moses says to them. Tomorrow is a day of rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Now you got this stuff, whether it's insect excretion or lichens out of the sky or stuff that falls off a tree, or it's just flat out miraculous manna that nobody can explain. He says, bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil, but you can set aside and keep all the leftovers until the next morning for the Sabbath, right? So it presupposes the Sabbath that's coming in the 10 Commandments. But here's the thing that I love about the way Moses sets this up. It's not their Sabbath. It's holy to the Lord, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. This is God taking the day off. I love this. Guys, like, I don't work on the Sabbath. Sorry, I'm not going to be raining bread out of the sky for you on the Sabbath. No, I'm off. So, the bakery's closed, y'all. Bakery's closed on Sabbath. So you're going to have to get this, you go to the grocery store and get enough for the weekend because I'm not working on Sunday. I don't work on Sunday. And that's very important. Our practice of Sabbath, and Shay was laughing at me before Bible study because I've been like going nonstop for 2 days. And he goes, I hope you'll be listening to this Sabbath business tonight. But it's like our practice of Sabbath is actually an emulation of what God already has set in order for God's own self. We always want to say we want to be as much like God as possible. We want to love like God loves. We want to be holy the way God is holy. We're going to want to be like God. We have to practice the Sabbath. And it's very, very hard for us. Very, very hard for us for a number of reasons, most of which because we have too many options anymore. Some of us are from the generation where things were closed on Sundays. Remember those days when you could ride through the middle of town and there wouldn't even be a car parked anywhere? Everybody was at home and families were tighter and people cared about each other. People went to see about each other. People would cook and be together and rest. And then in the evening, if you didn't go back to church, we went back to church, but in the evening, you'd all watch Wonderful World of Disney or something. Just kind of settle in and relax before Monday started, right? God practices a Sabbath. So who are we to say we don't do a Sabbath? If it's necessary for God to rest, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to preach. I could preach this though. It's really important to understand that and you're not hurting anybody's feelings. If you say I can't do it, I'm just staying home to rest. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings because people always, every day of your life, going to want you to do something. But here's something that's interesting about the Sabbath is it has a predecessor in Babylonian culture. And if we remember that the Sabbath was written, that the Torah was written around the time of the Babylonian captivity, this idea of Sabbath may actually be borrowed and then reconsecrated. Because the Babylonians, Shabbatu, is very interesting because it's actually translated from the Babylonian phrase. It means a calming of the heart. And this is not a calming of my heart or your heart in Babylonian context. It is giving the gods a day to just settle down because Babylonian gods are always angry. And so this is a way of just stopping what we're doing. Don't do anything to upset the gods. Don't do anything today to upset the gods. Don't work wrong. Don't do anything. Don't upset. Don't get violent. Don't do anything to upset the gods. We got to let the gods settle down. That was the Babylonian idea. What the Israelites do is they flip it on their head and say, this God who is gracious in abundance and does and looks out for us and cares for us and takes and protects us, that God gets a day off. So we're going to take a day off in honor of that God. And it becomes a day of joy. The Sabbath becomes a day of joy. But I think one of the strains that we are feeling in our own culture, and we could talk about two different things. The nomadic idea, I think we're seeing that reflected in this post-pandemic anxiety that folks are feeling. Have you noticed in a lot of news, there's just people going out and punching people, and shootings are up and all kinds of crazy stuff's up. People now are back out in the world and they're not prepared to cope with that. And there is this sort of new nomadic kind of anxiety, new kind of anxiety that's plaguing us. But on the other side, I think that we are not easing our anxiety because we are not practicing a Sabbath. We're just not. What I love about the church on Sunday was we get all confused now. We all go to church to see each other. And while we're here, we'll sing some songs and pray some prayers and do some God business. But originally, going to church was we all went to see God. That was what we did to go to church. The original idea of going to church weekly was to be in the presence of God, and then we would be in the presence of everybody else. But we've sort of flipped it, and that's why churches all of a sudden got real busy with who can have a quiet Sunday? Can't have a quiet Sunday because you got to do this, you got to do that, and you got to do this, you got to go this, you got to go. And I think we need to move back into a place just breathing, having a Sabbath. I don't know if I'm going to get anybody that's going to push back against that. I hope not. But be intentional about it. I've said this before, but I say it again. Some of us need to take Sabbaths from our news feeds. We just need to turn off the news for a day. And it doesn't matter who's been indicted for what. Just turn off the news for a day. Some of us need to take Sabbaths from our telephones. Because, we're either too busy letting the whole world know what we're doing, or else we're too busy trying to find out what everybody else is doing. And it crowds our minds and it cramps our ability, the room to think. Some of us need to take Sabbath from our extended families or even from our families. I need a day just to myself. But I want you to become a little more mindful of those things that are just conditional that might cause you anxiety. Some of us need to, somebody had said to me the other day, I said, that's just genius. They said that when they walk away for the weekend, they shut off their work email on everything, on their computers, they literally turn off their work email so that they're not getting anything over the weekend. Nobody who decides, because we're always at the mercy of somebody else decided at 11 o'clock on a Friday night to send out an email. Now we all have to answer it. Take a Sabbath from that stuff. Get away.
Tim,
yes,
that's such a great point, because I think one of the things that the Sabbath does, and one of the things that makes it such a revolutionary and radical idea, is that it really does break that sort of cycle of production and of this pressure to create or to work or to drive, which is always ever going to burn us out and make us really tired. And so it does that. And then it kind of, in the same way that the Israelite Sabbath, the Shabbat Shalom, right? Have this whole day, this wholeness, this peaceful day, this joyful day in which you're being healed or restored. It really creates a counter rhythm to the rhythms of, work, and breathe where you can, right? And rest where you can. Instead, it becomes a way of saying, no, I'm going to prioritize this rest. And it's out of this restful place that then I can work. And so it really flips that whole paradigm from just work and just breathe where you can, and kind of do that and saying no. When we prioritize the rest and we enjoy that joyful time for our bodies and our minds and our spirits and everything to rest, it's out of that place that we then step into our work. And I think we do so renewed and refreshed, and it's a completely different rhythm and to how we live our lives.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it also helps us prioritize better, because what clogs up our week is not just the work and the living, but all of the other things that we have decided, we have made ourselves believe we have to do. Yeah, I'm in desperate need of a haircut, but there are just some days, you know, like I looked at this weekend, it's like, I can't do it. I'm going to have this weekend that there's got to be a Sabbath in here, and it'll be, and if I just look shaggy, I'm just gonna have to look shaggy. But it's that kind of stuff that quite often we get all wrapped up in, and it's like, it's got to get done, it's got to get done, it's got to get done. And we need to pump the brakes on that a little bit. It might not need to get done. You know, it might be all right if the floors don't get vacuumed until the day after tomorrow. It might be all right. I don't think any of our floors are so bad that, you know, we're going to be in a health crisis, right? If we decided we're not going to vacuum on that Saturday's our Sabbath or Tuesday's our Sabbath, then I'm not vacuuming today. There's something about that, because then what we have to do, it puts us in a place where we are now in pursuit of joy. And that's the difference, because a lot of us, like for instance, a lot of us will go out to dinner, but we can't stay because I got to get home because I got to do some emails. I can't just lollygag over dinner, or I can't really just visit with you. I'd love to stay longer, but I can't. I can't sit with a book because I don't have time. And our lives are full of things that we are going to get to that we really want to do. And the reason why we can't get to them is because we're too busy doing a lot of stuff that we think we have to do. And so it's that kind of thing. Yes, the bills have to be paid. Yes, you know, food's got to be in the refrigerator. Yes, the work's got to be done. All that stuff's got to happen. But I believe in this constant access world that we live in, where I can, you know, do 15 things at one time. We're all doing 15 things at one time. And then we wonder, like, why are our children resentful? Why we don't have lasting relationships? Why we are unhappy? Why we're not feeling fulfilled? We're unrested. We're exhausted, completely exhausted. And so it's one of those hard lessons, that discipline. I will say this, that I love about the Sabbath beginning in the Exodus here, because remember, after Quail, it's like, now you're going to have your manna in the morning. Quail will come back at sundown the next night. You can collect the quail. The Sabbath is from sundown to sundown. So you get your quail, and then you're in for the Sabbath, and you just need to keep the manna for that second day. But I love the idea of starting a day of rest on the evening before. There's something really wonderful about that. Saying, you know, okay, it's not that I'm going to get up in the morning and rest. I'm going to start tonight. I'm going to make a dinner. I'm going to sit down. If this helps, if this blesses me, I'm going to binge watch something. Read something, sit and stare out the window, knit, do whatever it is tonight. Then when I'm ready, I'm going to go to bed rested because I'm not all uptight. Get up the next morning, do some more of those things. Go have orange juice and pancakes somewhere or something. Just do something that's for me. And then the sun will go down, and then I can re-engage. Any thoughts? Anybody got any other thoughts about this? Where do we struggle with this?
Too much stuff.
Too much stuff, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Too much stuff. A car to maintain, a house to clean, clothes to make sure they don't have holes in them.
Yeah.
Jobs to go to, family to make sure you're connected to.
Yeah.
Gardening to do. You got to make sure you got food. There's so much stuff.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's exactly it, right? So maybe the thing to think about, though, is some of that stuff, I think, I can't speak for you, Jeff, but some of that stuff might bring you joy, right? It is just a source of joy. That's kind of Sabbath stuff. You know, being out in the garden, but not being out in the garden. I've got an hour to get out here and pull all these weeds before, because I got to go, you know, now I got to run out here, and I got an appointment over there, and I got to go here, and I got to get the car washed. I got to do all these things. I got all day. If I got to
go to gather.
You got to go to gather. but no, it is that idea. If I've got
so much stuff.
But if I've just got all day to do the things I love, I can do them until I'm tired of doing them and do something else, right? As opposed to, I got to get this done, got to get that done, got to get this done, got to get that done. And so we just need to become a little more intentional in our leisure. That's really what Sabbath is intentional in leisure, as opposed to I can only read. I do this all the time. I need to read constantly, but can I do it constantly? No. So it's like, oh, I've got 15 minutes here. Let me see if I can crank out a chapter of this. And then it's like, and then I'm missing the flow of the book and the thought and the whole thing, as opposed to, you know what, I'm gonna read until I'm tired of reading. And that's a different kind of thing. So it's trying to get that, and I know that everybody's in the back, and you can all, I can't see you all, but I know you're all rolling your eyes going, yeah, okay, Tim, welcome to my world, right? I got so many things. You're right, so much stuff, so many things. But you know what? Some of the stuff that we think, everything can't be all important. It just can't, because then nothing's important if everything's important. So some points we have to make some calls on some things. It's just not that essential. It's just not that necessary. I'll get to it when I get to it. That's hard for us. Huh? Yeah. Any other thoughts before we look in? We're wrapping up. Yes, Willard.
I'm not for sure how to word this. I believe that because liberation is such a strong a statement, concept in Exodus, that liberation is somehow tied in with the Sabbath.
Yes.
But I'm not for sure exactly how to express that.
Well, let's play with this for a minute, because I think you're onto something very, very cool here. What does God sort of do by calling them out into the desert, right? Where they don't have homes, right? Calls them out in the desert. Everything they've got is on their backs, right? They've got this livestock, but evidently they're afraid to even kill their livestock and eat it, because it's like, how long are we out here? I don't know, right? So they're out there, and all of their first impulses, going back to this anxiety and this idea of we've lived this way for 430 years. Now we're not living this way at all. I don't know if I could survive a week on a farm, right? I just don't know how to live on a farm. That would be a radical move for me. But it's like this idea that they have been literally severed from a lot of their processes. Let's call it processes, right? And God is making them free. God is not only freeing them from enslavement, but freeing them from the life they knew, right? And so Sabbath is like practice total freedom. That's really, and I think you're onto something there. It is this idea of practicing total freedom. I think that Jesus's whole message of freedom is designed to call us into the ability to be Sabbath people, to be people who are so close to God that we can honor God in the way of saying, if God takes a day off, I can do it too. This idea of being free is to say, I can let those things go and not be anxious about them. I can let the dishes pile up. Oh, I just gave somebody a heart attack there. I can let the dishes sit in the sink until I get to them tomorrow. It won't hurt anybody. It'll just be a sink of, I'm actually working on a piece right now that is, the idea of work will wait. It's the one thing, y'all. Work is the one thing that will wait. Think about that. What you don't get done tomorrow, today, it'll be sitting right there looking at you tomorrow. It doesn't go away. But being with family, experiencing a meteor shower that you can see from the sky, taking a vacation, seeing a place in the world that maybe you'll never be able to get back to again. Taking the time to just savor a poem, those kinds of things, they're all so ephemeral. And yet they are also what are most liberating for us, right? I'll just leap right into, when I really need to be free, I put on Coltrane and just let myself drift and just ride John Coltrane. Just watch the sort of surf what he's doing with his music, and he'll take me away. But to do that, I have to decide I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. It has to be a conscious move. Work will wait. It's very hard for us though, right? Because we've also been groomed to be overachievers. That's the other problem, right? We always have to get our homework in on time, and it's got to be perfect, and we got to get the gold star on it. And we're conditioned from kindergarten to get those gold stars, to do everything we're told and to do it in a timely way. And it's very, very difficult for us. You know, what is our credit rating based on? We pay our bills on time. What is our job review? You showed up on time. You're on time. You're dependable. There's all of this pressure on us to perform, and none of that's liberating. None of it is. And so we have to kind of say, some of this stuff's just gonna have to wait. That thing I was gonna do, you know, paint the room another day. Just wait. Just let it wait. And I think there is definite freedom in there. I mean, is that kind of what you're pushing at, Wilbert? Yeah. And so being free, and a lot of the anxiety we carry is because we just won't let things wait. And we let that make us let that make us anxious. The stuff that was waiting, it's not troubled by it at all. You know, that work, I actually said this to a friend of mine who's an executive at a big pharma company. I said, you know what? Your daughters are growing up in front of your eyes, and I keep getting emails from you at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. Where are your daughters when you're writing these emails? And he just hung his head. And it's like, you know, you're going to look up and they're going to be gone. And I don't remember one of those emails that you sent me. I just remember getting them. I don't remember anything that was about. And you could have written me the next day. That's what we got to get ourselves relieved from. Because we think we're getting a jump on things, and really they're jumping on us. We're not free. How's that? But you still got to come together. Shay, let's wrap this up. The Sabbath is enjoying the gift of the Lord's day. And what I love about this Exodus, the way it introduces the Sabbath, is it is set in the context of God's gift to the Israelites. God gives them quail at night, God gives them manna in the morning, and God gives them the Sabbath to rest. They're all wound together. And this goes back to my observation at the top. When they wrote the story, they were looking at some deeper, eternal, ageless, timeless truths, which was God gives us time to do and to be. We become aware we've got 6 days to get our stuff done, a day to rest. God has given us this idea of months, full moons. It's all in this story. Traveling when the moon is provided to give us light. Here is bread for you in the morning. Here is meat for you in the evening. And here's a day of rest. It's all sort of there together. The Sabbath is God's gift to us because God has taken that gift unto God's self. God said, I'm going to take a day off. Y'all get a day off. The boss isn't coming in today. Just take the day off. It's all good. And so that's kind of how we want to begin to think about Sabbath practices. This is a gift that's been given to me. I can just take this. I can take this gift. It's free to me. And the provisions will happen. Time will take it. Tomorrow will come. I'll get back on the boat. But right now, I'm just going to sit on the island for a minute and just rest. We should have a once a week vacation, right? Take a vacation once a week. You don't have to be rich to do it. In fact, you probably do a better job if you're not rich at taking a once a week vacation because you don't have all this stuff to deal with. All righty. We get to this last little story. I'm going to be brief about this because it's just the first time they get in trouble. They come in and they meet the Amalekites. They are the descendants of Esau. Who is Israel? The Israelites are named for their daddy, Jacob, Israel. So it's a brotherly squabble that happens. They're out in the wilderness. According to Numbers, the Amalekites are the first nation. They are the oldest culture. They are a nomadic culture. And they're infamous for preying on the defenseless people. In fact, in Deuteronomy, it says that when they attacked Israel in this story, when the story is repeated in Deuteronomy, it says they came in from behind and got the weak and the weary and attacked the back ranks of those who are going through the wilderness. And it caused the people to look up and say, what's up here with this? Is the Lord really with us? Again, Where's God? What's going on here? And Moses says, I'm gonna hold up my shepherd's rod. And the Lord promises, as long as the rod is up in the air, that Joshua, who comes out of nowhere, y'all, we don't know anything about Joshua. He just shows up. He's such a famous character in the Hebrew imagination. They don't even say where he was born or who his mama was. Here's Joshua. Joshua's going to go fight the battle. Now, it's very interesting, and I want to make a point here. Echoes of Ted Jennings, for those of you that have been in Ted's classes. Joshua in Hebrew is Yeshua. Does anybody know somebody else in scripture whose name was Yeshua? Jesus. Jesus is named for Joshua. Jesus is named for the aid to the prophet, for the leader who is able to engage and to get things done. I love that. So Aaron, Moses' brother, and Hur, and we don't really know much about Hur either. Hur just keeps popping up and nobody tells us who this Hur character is. But they hold up Moses' arms. They pull up a stone, say, here, take a seat, hold your arms up. And Joshua prevails. And then we get what becomes a scripture that makes folks think that Moses wrote all these books. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a reminder on a scroll and read it to Joshua. I will completely wipe out the memory of Amalek under the sky. And Moses built an altar there and called it, the Lord is my banner. And so we begin to see two things happen. Now we are talking about the written text. Even though in this time there was no writing, right? But so these stories are orally transmitted. But now the writers who are assembling the Torah are saying that Moses sat down and took some notes for us, gave us some notes, and read it to Joshua. But then this idea of the Lord is my banner, I am protected. God is my protection. I care, the name of God by itself is protection for me. And that's sort of where this story ends. Any other thoughts, comments, surprises, anything that we need to think about? Tony?
So I'm not sure how much this applies to the story, because I mean, the reason I thought of it was because they're in sort of like a desert, like sort of a barren area. And as I was reading this, I sort of thought back to something that Chris might remember. It's basically called the expedition by Sir John Franklin of Britain, who tried to look for the Northwest Passage in the Canadian Arctic. But the amount of things that went wrong, oh man, there's a lot, because some of his men got scurvy, some of his men got scurvy, the botulism, especially botulism type E, which is the only strain of botulism that can survive under that kind of conditions in the Arctic. It can be found in marine life like whales and seals.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Admiralty chose to buy their canned foods from the lowest bidder. So, and thus they weren't probably sealed. So
Wow.
And so there was lead poisoning because the cans weren't properly sealed due to the fact that, and caused some of the food to spoil. And also the engines that they used for the ships, Erebus and Terror, were originally used for trains. They weren't maritime engines. And it's especially considering how, in that period, the Arctic experienced an intense cold and sort of an intense cold period where the ice just refused to melt.
Wow.
So, I mean,
no, yeah, Tone.
Even
go ahead.
So yeah, like I mean, Chris, have you heard about that? The John Franklin expedition to the Arctic?
Yeah, John Franklin's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much a disaster from start to finish.
I think what we keep seeing I'm gonna pull you back now to the Exodus. We keep seeing these potentials for utter disaster, and we keep sort of seeing this remarkable intervention, but it's not magical. It comes after much sort of contention, right? God, what are you doing? Where are you? God's like, what are you doing, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that I was thinking, and again, it was sparked by a conversation Tony was having with me of this whole Exodus kind of thing is, and in that context of, you know, it is a story of a people, and kind of as a people are on the move.
Yeah.
Trying to capture that and keeping a sense of identity, and without that, it's so easy to lose a sense of identity and to lose our history. And you know, it's that kind of thing of one of the things that I was chatting with Tony around, and I know that Shay's in North Carolina and Gloria is in Georgia. Anyone who claims Scottish ancestry from North Carolina or Georgia, particularly kind of going back 250 years, probably moved to North Carolina or Georgia as part of a prison colony from the 1745 Scottish Highland rebellions.
Yeah, that's right.
And yet, probably they have lost sense of we were prisoners in Carolina and Georgia and have taken on that British identity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that there is that whole, and of course in America, that this sort of Anglo exceptionalism becomes a cloak that you can wrap yourself in, right? It's like, you know, it's, you know, I heard a preacher one time try to suggest that we're in America, white folks in America. I was just so stunned by all of this. He wouldn't say white folks, but we knew what he was talking about, because he was talking about we are all descended from the English, he said. And that the English are really descended from the Jews, and that if you did all of the whole, I've lost the word for it, the genealogy, you could trace Queen Elizabeth all the way back to King David. And he had the most far-fetched stuff. And my favorite piece of it all was because they're British, and Brit in Hebrew means the son of, and something like that. And it was like, and I'm like, no, that's the Britons, and they were known that, and that word means they're tattooed people. I don't know where you're getting all this stuff, but people will make up these really ornate kinds of ways that will try to make all these things. And the truth of the matter is, my mom was a McDougal. I'm pretty sure that, you know, my great whatever was probably brought over as a prisoner, because we landed in the South. But we're not going to tell that story. You know, that's not the way that goes. Tone?
Also, to get this, so there was a theory where that received a lot of controversy in time, like, because I mean, these guys were the astronauts of their day. They were supposed to like the heroes. They were looked at as heroes by the people, and so there was one theory that went around that was brought on by the local Inuit population, where the men aboard the John Franklin expedition actually resorted to cannibalism. And even Charles Dickens at the time wrote that, you know, just they're just savages, they're just unreliable at best. Well, in the 1980s,
yeah,
it turns out that they found these sort of markings, which like these cut marks, which seem very, from some sources I can gather, very reminiscent of to how, you know, cannibalism worked. Like they would, you know, just and so guess who was right? Guess which theory won out, and guess who was proven right in the end about what happened to the whole expedition?
Okay, there you go. Right?
The Inuit population. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that
yes.
testament to irony?
And I think
irony right there.
There you go. I think, Tony, you and Chris and the Exodus are all getting at the same thing, which is we are always trying to come to grips with our origins and how we came to be. I love that the writers are taking what are probably ancient traditions in this people and situating them in a story, right? So this Sabbath idea, we don't know how long the Sabbath idea was around, but they're bringing them together. Any other final thoughts before we wrap it up? Are you guys enjoying this? Because I know we're just geeking you out in some respects, but I mean, is this interesting? You're good. I'm just sort of fascinated with it. Partly because we grow up with all these stories, right? You know, and yet we don't know kind of what's underneath them. So we're wrapping up, and I want to again appreciate you all, appreciate all of your support. If you get some time and you've got a little spare change, and you know you need to offload it before you take your Sabbath, this is this is you can certainly put a little in the pot. We will greatly appreciate it. Next week, we are going to get into getting the culture organized. They try to get things figured out, and they're going to decentralize some of Moses's power. You're going to see what's going to happen. They're going to try to get this community in order, because the following week is when the big central event of the Exodus happens. But so this week we kind of got a little time to look at how this community gets organized, and kind of the considerations that they take into mind. So that's all of it. And I just want to thank you all for a lovely night. We'll give one last opening. I haven't had any chance to read any of the comments, so I'm going to be all excited to read that one after this downloads. Any final, and y'all were busy, weren't you? You were very busy. I can see this. Any final thoughts? Tone your hands up one more time. Are we good? No, you're good. All right. All right, everybody. You've got a holiday weekend to try the Sabbath. Give it a try. Yeah, just give it a try and see what happens. Maybe you might have to do it maybe you can't get a whole 24 hours done. Try it for 12 and see. You know, it's like running. When I first started running, I couldn't run a mile. Then I learned to run a mile. Then I learned to run a little longer. So we're undoing the industrialization of our lives is really what we're undoing when we practice the Sabbath. And it's not you just can't, a cold turkey Sabbath might create a whole lot of anxiety, but you might be able to ease yourself off of that workaholism. How's that? Amen. So yes, and always, if I ever call any of you for any reason at all, and you're in a Sabbath, you say, hey, Pastor, never mind, I'm in the middle of my Sabbath, and it'll be like, I gotta go. I'll see you later. I won't even give you that much. I'll give you a click. That's what it will be. Okay. It won't be an angry hang up. It'll be like, okay, got you. See you later. How's that? Amen. We want to be whole. We want to be whole. And so much of this work takes it out of us. We've got to practice. Amen. God bless you all. Lord, we thank you for this study. We thank you for your word. We thank you for the truth of your word and the way that it just illuminates our lives in so many different and unexpected and even amusing kinds of ways. Thank you for your joy. Now I pray that you will take us from this place, make us always mindful of your presence. Remind us that you take the day off. Help us to learn to take a day off as well. We bless you because we know that provision is there. It's there. It may not be, we may want steak, but it may be quail. We may want croissant, and it may be manna, but provision is there. Teach us to recognize that you are working and giving us what we need. We ask all of this in the name of your beloved. Amen. God bless you all. Good night. We'll see you soon.